One attempt to undermine the historicity of the resurrection argues that there are alternate traditions about the nature of Jesus' burial. The argument being that if one of these alternate traditions is true, we can disregard the evidence offered by Paul in the Gospels. As we'll see though, the evidence claimed for this is rather thin. Actually, only 2 passages. The first passage claimed to provide an alternate burial tradition is Acts 13:27-29. According to some critics, this passage reflects an alternate tradition in which Jesus was buried by his enemies who crucified him. The assumption being that Joseph of Arimathea, as an ally of the Christians, cannot be detected in this statement. The absurdity of this is that Luke is the author of Acts, and he elsewhere affirms the burial in Joseph's tomb. At worst, then, we have a case where Luke reports the words of Paul before Paul learned all the details about Jesus' burial, or at a time before Joseph's true loyalties were widely known. More likely, though, we should just regard Paul's words as convenient shorthand for what happened, in a setting where he's offering summary versions of events. Although this verse is surrounded by a story of the burial in Joseph's tomb, some critics use it in conjunction with a citation from the early church apologist Tertullian, who wrote the following. According to critics, this late 2nd century or early 3rd century writer might be preserving an accurate tradition in which Jesus' body really was taken from the tomb by a gardener. However, it seems rather tendentious to argue that Tertullian accurately preserves a tradition that is between 175 and 200 years old, while the Gospel of John, written no later than 90 AD even according to the most radical critics, is dismissed as unreliable a mere 60 years after the events it records. Although it may reflect anti-resurrection polemic in Tertullian's time well enough, what Tertullian says tells us nothing about such polemic in the 1st century. That's all we have for alternate burial traditions of Jesus. In the next and last installment in Part 3, we'll take a brief look at another related argument: alternate traditions of post-resurrection appearances by Jesus. See you then.